Hello and welcome to this First Look Exploring session, a continuing First Look Exploring session, looking at the arrival of the King of Denmark and all the various royal entries, forward, backwards, upside down, and in reverse that they do. He arrived by boat, and he's going to leave by boat, which is appropriate because it's an island and we haven't built a tunnel yet. So last time we looked at an account by Henry. It was Henry, isn't it? Henry Roberts, the most royal and honourable entertainment of the famous and renowned King Christian IV, King of Denmark, which took us up to Thursday, the 31st of July, and gave us a bit of a look at the honourable shows that were presented at the time. This session, we are looking at England's farewell to Christian IV, famous King of Denmark, with a relation of such shows and several pastimes presented to His Majesty, as well as at court the 5th day of August last past, as in other places since his honourable passage through the city of London. Yes, we have lots and lots of detail that we're going to fill in. There are more accounts. This is go to. We will have a third session. We might even end up with enough material to do 4. It might be pushing it that much. We will see. But anyway, in the room to read this material and maybe some other material that we'll throw in along the way, we have Sarah, we have Tom, we have Tracy, we have Valentina, and we have Desna. And I'm your host, Robert. And yes, without further ado, I'm going to ask Sarah to basically read what I've just read fairly large chunk of, down to the end of the dedication of H. Roberts. So give us that opening bump as all the print material that this produces.
England's farewell to Christian IV, famous King of Denmark, with a relation of such shows and several pastimes presented to His Majesty, as well as at court the 5th day of August last past, as in other places since his honourable passage through the city of London. The most honourable entertainment of His Highness aboard His Majesty's ships in the road of Gillingham near the city of Rochester in Kent, with the King's entertainment aboard the Denmark ships at Gravesend, as also their honourable leave-taking and farewell, setting sail from Gravesend on Monday night, the 11th of August, 1606, by H. Roberts. Printed at London for William Welby, 1606. To the Right Worshipful Sir John Jollies, Knight, Alderman and Sheriff of the City of London, Henry Roberts, your worship's true devoted, wisheth all increase of worship in this world, and after this life, the joys eternal. Right worshipful, long since in those employments I had for the Irish affairs in the time of our most dread and gracious sovereign, deceased, and ever sithence, I sought opportunity to make some show of my zeal unto you. But time never favouring the expectation of my desired thought, I was enforced to keep silent my love's intention. Yet now, having some occasion, through these great and most honourable favours showed unto the gracious and renowned King of Denmark at his being here by our famous king, nobility and states of our land, whereof many have been eye-witnesses near this honourable city, yet considering that many thousands which desired to see the same have been debarred of their contentments therein, and having bestowed my time and charge in noting from time to time what hath been done in all honour to welcome this renowned king in several places, and sundry honourable pastimes, no doubt, to the eternal honour of His Majesty and this land, I have emboldened myself to publish the same under your worship's protection, and beseech you of your accustomed clemency so to accept it, as it is faithfully intended. So shall I bind myself ever to your service, and in all duty rest your worships. Ever to be commanded, H. Roberts.
As Greg so eloquently put it last time, grovel, grovel, grovel. And it's interesting because we've got these two accounts, both by the same person. They seem to be pretty much done back to back. Were they sort of a rush job? And it's the fact that he dedicates them to two different people. So the previous one was Sir Thomas Smith, Knight, and this is Sir John. Is it Jolly's? Or is it Joel's? Tracy, do we know anything about this particular Knight Alderman and Sheriff of the City of London?
Funnily enough, I've never heard it out loud before because I don't live in the Jacobean period. But I've always in my head said it's Joel's, but it could well be Jolly's. I've no idea. He was a draper. He was one of the kind of city, usual city merchants, very wealthy. Became Lord Mayor about 10 years later. Interestingly, he was knighted about the time that the King of Denmark arrived, 23rd of July, which is kind of interesting. So he's obviously kind of high profile at that. He's very clearly in favour with James. So Robert's making quite a good call there, I think.
So yes, basically that's just the throat clearing of saying how wonderful. Little nod to the previous monarch, for the reference to the Irish affairs. I assume we're talking about Elizabeth with the deceased there. It's giving us a little bit of context because Sir James has only been on the throne a few years, and they've been slightly troublesome years on and off. Something almost happened the previous year that might have been a bit awkward in a political way around about November time. So he's the sort of the significance of having this big royal visit by another king. Is that to sort of partly is it in part to shore himself up, or is it to show solidarity? What's going on there?
I think it's probably is those latter things. Christian was James's brother-in-law, as I'm sure you all know. So it's a kind of act of solidarity with a fellow Protestant monarch, very well established monarchy, highly regarded, etc., etc. Obviously, the family connection is important there. Roberts himself has got quite a long track record of working for Elizabeth, then James, and he did quite possibly serve in Ireland actually in the 1590s. So, I don't know how he would have got the job to write this pamphlet. Maybe he just decided he was going to do it anyway. He was probably a hanger around. Some description, yeah.
Yes, Sarah.
I have a question. After the unfortunate incident from the previous November, I'm just thinking.
Just for the listeners at home, just in case anyone doesn't know, we're talking about the gunpowder plot where they nearly blew up the Houses of Parliament. Anyway,
I'm just thinking what would happen today. Did they? Was there a conscious effort to beef up security? The fact that presumably, he comes over. They do. I only know the one really gossipy letter, which probably isn't true at all, about what Christian got up to while he was there. But presumably there was lots of partying and lots of parading about. Did they sort of? Was there more tension? But after that, I'm just assuming there would be. I'm just trying to think what would happen if someone tried to blow up the Houses of Parliament these days. No one would be able to get within, 400 miles of London, probably. All the peasants would be kept back in the outer perimeters. So, did they?
Well, James, there've been attempts allegedly an attempted assassination of James 6 years previously when he was still in Scotland.
Wow. Okay. So right.
It's called the Gowrie plot. Roberts refers to it actually in the text, which is possibly a bit tactless. So I'd imagine that, they were doing very conscious of James's personal security. But his father was murdered, obviously. So there's kind of quite a history there of that sort of instability.
I'm just wondering then if someone actually paid Roberts to do this as a sort of PR exercise. It's
not even necessarily that he got paid to do it. It's just the way, as I say, patronage works and influence works. It would be good for business to write something like this as well. So it might be something along those lines. And just on the security notice, we they do have barriers to keep the hoi polloi away from the thing, but and there are complaints about them, but I don't think because of their structural integrity or whether they're stopping people watching them. I think it was a much more a question of who paid for them looking beautiful.
There would have been a kind of military type entourage, without doubt. Then he would have been conspicuously protected, I imagine.
Yes, I mean today we're recording this during the period of mourning for the late Queen Elizabeth II, and during a lot of the pageantry we've noticed going on. There was an awful lot of people subtly standing to one side with assault rifles. So I imagine possibly there's an early modern equivalent. I don't know. Anyway, we should dive into a bit more text. I say we're going to start actually get into a little bit of actual detail. So I asked Desna if you could read not the next bit of Bump, the England's Farewell, it's just the title repeated. If you could read the next paragraph, that there is no greater comfort to man. Tom, if you can read the next paragraph after that. Valentina, the next paragraph after that. And Sarah, the next paragraph after that. And then we will stop. In theory, we shall see. Anyway, we should start getting to some actual data about the thing that we're interested in understanding what happened. So, reiteration of the title, in slightly different words, but it's basically exactly the same. And we get into the actual text itself. Desna.
That there is no greater comfort to man than perfect love to be maintained one with the other. There is few or none, but having Christian charity can testify. For besides the prescript rule of God, which commandeth we love one another, it bringeth such contentment to the mind that there can be no jewel of so rare and high esteem as the perfect love of friends. How many great potentates have in their inward thoughts preferred the love of some especial one in their pleasures to solace with, and in their counsels to participate with in all passions both of body and mind, to be as a second self.
Such is the effect of love, that many have hazarded life, and whatever the earth did afford them their love to make it known. Some for their country love have died, some for their friend, and many by, forgive me, the text is jumping around, many by adventuring honor of their houses by the force of their love.
If such be the touchstone of that virtue, and so highly ought to be regarded, how many all Christians joy therein, that have or do participate of the same? And how may we admire in this iron age wherein so many vices abound, to behold the amity of neighbour with neighbour, nation with nation, and friend with friend, where, by the contrary, no torment on earth may be comparable to the inward griefs that heart endureth, where envy hath domination. And truly is it said and written of that horrible sin, by whom, and through whom many great outrages have been attempted and done, and daily we have seen the subject attempting the death of their sovereign, the son of the father, the husband of the wife, and many times the wives their husbands. This hellhound envy, begotten by the devil, where it once fostereth, never giveth over his host until he hath brought him to confusion, of which we have too many examples. God grant, we that profess Christ Jesus in one sympathy of heart and mind may abolish that hag, and truly embrace that heavenly commandment to love one another, and that we all, subjects of this peaceful and most gracious sovereign King James, may be so united in love to our Maker and duty to his Majesty, that the devil never have power to cause us forget the one or the other.
But that seeing his excellency is the true touch of love. not only to us, his home-born people, but unto all Christian nations, whatever they be that seek his favour or comfort, a father to the stranger, and a careful maintainer of peace for his people, a true Jonathan to his David, a holy anointed of the Lord, in this most royal king. Oh, let us all true subjects note, and noting, imprint in our hearts the rare and most honourable love of his Majesty, showed to the person of his royal brother, King of Denmark, between whose loves there may be no comparison. The one, love caused to commit his kingly person to the adventure of fears and enemies, to see his joy, the comfort of his royal estate, our gracious sovereign, the Queen's Majesty, and their royal issue, whose love, with brotherly love, hath been so joyfully accepted of their highnesses, as never hath been seen in this land the like. Yea, such a surpassing joy may it ever be amongst us, that we can never think, speak, or write too much thereof.
Just pause there. Well, that's quite a sentiment. I mean, in a sense, it's very straightforward. Let's not have envy, the hellhound envy, that hag. Quite a turn of phrase. Let's all be friends. Let's all be friends. Let's not kill one another. Let's not let's yeah. There's something quite pointed about that. It's a perfectly laudable sentiment. It feels a little awkward when it starts going on to the death of their sovereign moment. I'm sort of going, sure, this is the I suppose so yeah, that's but it is mostly throat clearing. We are about to get to actual data about things that happened rather than sentiments. But any thoughts on that? Because he's got a way with a turn of phrase, I suppose. Any thoughts in the room? Sarah?
I mean, I am not very familiar with these sorts of texts, so I'm sure they're probably all like this. But he really is pushing the whole, our lovely king thing, isn't he? I mean, it's like, he's so lovable. He's so lovable. He's the most lovable king anywhere. It's not just, I mean, I'm thinking some of the dedications that we've had, the grovelly dedications at the beginnings and ends of plays that I've read with you, and I mean, they are super grovelly, but it's always about the pomp and the majesty and the bright sun shining upon us mere mortals, whereas this, it's all like, but he's so lovable, isn't he? And I'm just wondering if that's a kind of, don't blow him up. That would be really sad, because he's just such a lovely man.
And it's that these two kings, they are so together. There is no envy between them. They're not envious of each other's kingdoms. They're not going to go to war or anything. They're very much allies, and that sort of sentiment, which again is lovely. But it's any other thoughts before we actually get to some data that might be useful? And before we get to that, I will just bring up on my on my screen the vaguely helpful sort of route map for. It combines both the Lord Mayor's Show processional route and also some of the routes that royal entries take. Now, last time we left from one side and came out the other, and we're going to be doing this in reverse this time. So whereas last time you'd be coming in from the right of the map, we're going to be returning, I think, from the left. I think that's the way this is going to go. So we will be joining elements of this. This doesn't necessarily contain the actual route that we have precisely. I haven't, as of yet, updated the Royal Entry route to include all of the slight variations that happen. But broadly speaking, you're going to end up on Cheapside, because that's where everyone always ends up, because it's wide. It's a wide road, as opposed to a lot of streets that are quite narrow. So it's a good place to arrange this kind of thing. I'll leave that on in the background while we read on. Everyone, you can come back in again. We can make the picture small. It doesn't matter. It can live in the background. I'll keep it up for a little bit just to keep that in mind, because we are going to get to some elements here that are going to be working their way along the map there. So, Tracey, you haven't read. You can read the Oh Rare Love, which is following on from that thought. Then we'll go to Desna, Tom, Valentina, and Sarah again. I might stop you before we do the full route, but I'm sticking with the same approximate order. So, Tracey, I think we're moving on from Love of the King or both kings, and we're going to move on to vague mentionings of things that happened in the past before we go on to things that happen in the future.
O rare love, O kingly and royal precedent for all people to note what has happened since the 16th of July, now last past, the day of his famous King Denmark's first arrival in Tilbury Hope, where he was entertained and brought from his ship with his chief delight our dread sovereign and the prince, lovingly welcomed by the Queen and States and joyfully received by all their subjects, who with duty and zeal made it known in the best manner no so short time would give leave. Yet such it was, as his princely mind was much delighted in the same, and no doubt doth applaud this honourable city, both for beauty, wealth, and pleasure. A most excellent note and honourable appearance of his gracious acceptance their love showed, may be gathered by his sudden and silent coming again in person to view the state of this city and rare monuments thereof. Having seen it the last of July in all royalty, citizens in their rich attire, the houses garnished, and such multitudes of people of all estates, in this manner ensuing came to view it.
The next day being Friday, on the 1st of August, this royal king, knowing the zeal and love of our nation, whose loyalty he need not distrust, accompanied with the Earls of Nottingham, Sussex, and others, in their coaches came to St. Paul's Church, where he walked and viewed the same, and from thence to the top of the steeple, where he took much delight to behold the beauteous situation of London, the pleasant gardens and fields adjoining, the richness of the Thames, so furnished with ships of great countenance and worth, as he graciously applauded the excellency thereof. But amongst all other things he admired most, when the noblemen accompanying him, did report the being of a horse upon that place, coming up such a way of great danger, and so ye, that he took very good notice thereof, and wonderfully did admire the same.
From thence he took his coach with his company and passed on to the Exchange, viewing the beauty of Cheapside and the riches of the inhabitants, the goldsmiths, mercers, and other wealthy trades, all the way setting their commodities to sale, a sight which may delight any prince in the world to behold.
To grace this royal exchange, so named by our late royal queen, his grace walked round about the Honourable, and viewed with great pleasure the same. Then came he to the merchants' walks beneath, where it was told his highness the manner of our merchants, and the hours of their meetings, where from all countries there was daily news to be heard by one means or other. Here they make great exchanges of their merchandise, make their traffic to foreign countries, ship their men for service, so that their greatest affairs were every day twice there effected.
There hence proceed they by Cornhill, Gracious Street, and Fenchurch to the Tower of London, where our gracious sovereign, his dear esteemed brother King James, met his highness, and with kingly welcomes entertained him, and in his own person conducted him to the offices of the Jewel House, Wardrobe, of the Ordnance, Mint, and other places, where to their kingly presence in the Jewel House were presented the most rare and richest jewels and beautiful plate, so that he might well wonder thereat, but cannot truly praise or estimate the value thereof by many thousands of pounds.
And there we will pause, because we have lots of things to discuss there. But we've got the route is following the map quite nicely. We primary start at St Paul's, work along Cheapside, and then we're working along Cornhill. Gracious Street, Fenchurch, and the Tower of London. So I don't know if I put... Yes, the Tower is there. Yes, so that all of those stops are, roughly speaking, put in place. But there's lots of things we can discuss there. And I think we'll just start off with... I just love the they take him up. Oh, let's give him a view from the tower. There we are. Take him up to the top of Old St Paul's, of course. It's not a dome or anything. And we have a mention of a horse. Is it Morocco? Is it Banks Bay horse? Or is it a different horse? The other horses may surely be available. Where precisely is this horse? How does this work? What's going on with this horse?
It is Morocco. It is Banks' horse. John Chamberlain watched it happen. He's a famous performing horse.
Mm. Yes, we have read various works that cover him. There is a pamphlet which features Morocco actually talking to his owner/trainer in dialogue form. It's not quite as exciting as it sounds, but it is reasonably fun. But yeah, he was well known for doing tricks and was a celebrity, possibly more of a celebrity than quite a few humans. Sorry, Tracey.
Banks famously rode him up the steeple of St Paul's Cathedral, and Chamberlain records that there were crowds of people watching it, obviously, and laying bets on possibly how high he would get, whether he would fall off. So yeah, it was quite a famous little moment.
So
I just have to. Sorry, I need the end of that story. I take it he didn't fall off.
No, I think they just carried on doing acts.
Marvelous.
So sort of counting tricks and things like that with and grabbing people on command.
He pointed a hoof at Dick Tarleton at the Bell Savage.
Yeah. And whereupon he went, "God a mercy, horse," which was a byword to this day, if it wasn't already a commonplace and a thing that possibly existed predating Tarleton. But never mind. It's a good story. Tom.
So he took his coach with the company and passed the exchange, viewing the beauty of Cheapside and the richness of the inhabitants. How much of a powerhouse was Cheapside? I mean, was it a glorious, very rich and busy place of merchants?
It was very busy. It was the largest street in the city. Well, it still is the largest street in the city. And it was the main kind of processional route as well. So you had Cheapside Cross, you have St Mary le Bow Church, which is the second most important church in the city after St Paul's, the Standard, 2 conduits at least, and the Goldsmiths' Row, which was famous across Europe for being one of the most kind of beautiful and wealthy dwelling for primarily goldsmiths. So yeah, it was really famous.
I was just wondering also, have they set out additional stalls to just demonstrate to the king, look how wealthy we are? Or is this just that, it feels like there's a special display of just, hi, would you like to buy a watch? It's duty free, the really wealthy part of the duty free.
Yeah. Got a big Easter toe vibe going on here. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And this is in addition to the when the kings came through the city for their kind of formal entry, when Cheapside was again kind of in the main area. They came through. This is a kind of return visit, isn't it? Where he sort of I didn't give enough of it last time. I'm going to come back.
Yeah. So whereas last time, which we featured last time, it was much more. It felt more orchestrated and more formal, whereas this feels more like just a bit of a saunter. I'm gonna do some sightseeing, do some shopping, properly talk to people along the way, and it feels more relaxed because, of course, he's outward bound, not inward bound. So it's like he's, possibly they've had some merrymaking along the way. So maybe he's much more feeling in the place. They go to the Royal Exchange, which is the other end of Cheapside, so named by our late Queen. And His Grace walked around, and now I don't know what that word is. I know it's wrong in the text. Tracey, do you think you can give us a clue what it means?
It'll be the Royal Exchange was constructed with a kind of gallery first floor. and the merchants and their stores and things were on the ground floor. So it'll be that higher level. But off the top of my head, I can't think what that word would be. I'll see if I can find out.
Yeah, it's clearly above. It's something above, and I'm not sure what the bit is. The prefix there is, but yeah, clearly they're sauntering around the Royal Exchange, and again, it's all looking at merchandise, looking at wares, looking at the busyness of this Royal Exchange. And yeah, all sorts of exciting. Tower of London. You've got to go around the Tower of London, haven't you? It's a visit to London. It's what you've got to do. Have a look round the Mint and all the other exciting offices of state that may still be inhabiting the actual location at that time. Whereas I think last time, the last description was all about the clothing. There was this constant description of all the clothes they're wearing and all the trim. Apologies to anyone who has already watched that previous video or were there, but just for those who weren't. Whereas this one, it's much more on solid items of just conspicuous wealth. It's just gold everywhere. Aren't we wealthy? Aren't we a wealthy country? Sarah.
Is that because of who it was dedicated to? I mean, you said earlier that the first part was dedicated to someone else. I mean, was he a merchant as well, or is it the fact that he's dedicating this to some really wealthy merchant that he's really zooming in on all that stuff?
That's a really good question. Possibly, yeah, there might be a connection there. It's very complimentary about the city, actually, in a way that you don't often see. You quite often see this city's kind of got above itself, and it's got so much money, it's gone to its head kind of thing, effectively. But yeah, this is, possibly. I'll think about that.
I mean, we shouldn't necessarily distinguish display of gold and or money or that kind of wealth with saying displaying clothing. Clothing was incredibly wealthy items to be owning as well. If you've got the really fine stuff, so it's all conspicuous display. It's just a slightly different flavour. But yeah, it might be down to whatever trade they're involved in, or just what was going on this time. Maybe you just forgot to buy the catalogue. Anyway. I'm assuming the next sentence starts with is wardrobe rather than rope. But I could be wrong on that. I've not heard of a wardrobe. I don't know if that's a thing. Anyway, we'll go around the room in the same approved fashion, I think. Tracey, if you'll start as Oz, Desna, Tom, Valentina, and Sarah. I think that's the order. If I'm wrong, leap in and we might go around twice because these are slightly shorter bits. We'll get to Monday possibly, and then I'll stop here.
The like in the wardrobe were for rich robes beset with stones of great price, fair and precious pearl and gold, with such as no king in the world might compare. Besides the rich furniture of hangings, clothes of estates, cushions, chairs, and kingly furniture for his palaces, as they cause much admiration and bring great content to the beholders.
But passing then on to the office of the ordnance, he well viewed the warlike provision of the great ordnance, which at an hour is ready for any service to be commanded. Over every piece the ladles and sponges hang to lade them with all, and the traces and colours for the horses to draw them away when they shall need to serve.
The armoury and store of small shot so well maintained and kept, the numbers ready fitted of all sorts of muskets, cavaliers, pentrolles, dags, and other serviceable weapons, as pikes, halberts, targets, shields of sundry fashion, for variety, antiquity of things, and the relating of their uses, did make him with great and honourable admiration to behold them all very well and commend them.
These rare, rich, and most admirable pleasant sights overgone, their Majesties ascend to the Mint, which they viewed, and from thence to the lions and other wild beasts there kept and maintained for his highness' pleasures and pastimes, all kingly delights, and such variety as I think the world cannot bring in one country more store, as it hath been noted by many great travellers, who have seen the greatest courts of the world.
From this place, as they went to take their barges, the King of Denmark walked a turn or two upon the Tower Wharf, viewing the rich and forcible ordnance there placed, whereof there was no small store, as his Majesty might well remember, by the Honourable peal was made him the day before, at their setting frowards from the Tower to go through the city.
Yes, actually, I will stop there because I think we should just mention the lions that the Highness maintains for his Highness' pleasure and pastimes. So fun lion times. I don't know if anyone knows more about the various animals available for the king's pleasure, but they definitely had lions, at least at this particular juncture. A sort of display. I mean, it's not quite a display of military hardware. I mean, it is a display of military hardware. But it's not like they've got cruise missiles going down Cheapside or anything. They've gone to visit the where this stuff is made and stored and things. So it's not quite the same. And Sarah, I think, found just a confirmation that whereas we thought it might have been a typo, but it was in fact the pawn above was a term from as part of the Royal Exchange. You found it, Sarah? Did you?
I just did a random search for Royal Exchange original building history. And I found online a volume called Old and New London, Volume 1, The Royal Exchange by Walter Thornbury, which was published in 1878. And it just included this account. Do you want me to read it out?
Yeah, just a little quote.
Yeah. Many of the shops in the Bourse remained unlet until Queen Elizabeth's visit in 1570, which gave them a lustre that tended to make the new building fashionable. Gresham, anxious to have the Bourse, I think he was the guy who built it, wasn't he? Anxious to have the Bourse worthy of such a visitor, went round twice in one day to all the shopkeepers in the upper pawn and offered them all the shops they would furnish and light up with wax rent-free for the whole year. I mean, that's quite a big deal, isn't it? Wax candles for they were quite expensive. So yeah.
Yeah, move in. We'll give you free energy concessions for a year. That's pretty good. And of course, we even have plays featuring Elizabeth visiting the Royal Exchange as well. So it's part of the local mythology even by this point. It's taking over. So, where were we? Yes, sorry, lions. There we are. Lions and they've had a jolly good time. They've gone back to their barges. A road to Whitehall. Did we read that bit, or is that the next bit we're about to read? I'm sorry, I lost track of who read where. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, that's what's about to happen now. So, so they've got to their barges. Walked a turn or two upon Tower Wharf. They've had a lovely stroll. They've had a lovely wander. It's nice. It's nice. Let us carry on. Tracey, when their pleasures were well delighted, I think.
When their pleasures are well delighted with these shows, the tired servants shoot the bridge. They took their barges and were rowed to His Majesty's house, Whitehall. And they're going from the wharf. An honourable peal of great ordnance was discharged. The officers using great diligence and foresight, and the gunners applying themselves very painfully to the performance thereof. The time being so short, as truly they did all deserve great commendations.
And keep going around. Desna, then Tom, then Valentina, then Sarah.
Hang on, I've lost the...
This day brought.
No, I can't. There we go. This day brought with honour to end. They reposed themselves this night. And in the morning, very early, being Saturday, they hunted in the park of St. James and killed a buck.
Then passed they on to the Hyde Park, where they hunted with great delight, spending the rest of the afternoon or the forenoon in following their pleasure. And about the time of dinner returned, and there dined. And about 4 o'clock, the barges being by the commandment ready at the privy stairs, they went by water to Greenwich.
The next day, being Sunday, Her Majesty was churched, to the great joy of all the beholders, the 2 kings being present at that time, where they heard a learned sermon.
This day they solace in their private delights, the kingly brothers, the queen, prince, and nobles of both realms, showing by all the means they can their loves, by variety of delight to beguise the time and bid them welcome.
Ah, isn't it nice? They went hunting. They wandered around. Went around Hyde Park and hunted there. I mean, all these names, of course. The idea of hunting in Hyde Park is is a slightly alien conception to us today. And then they went to church on Sunday. So it was a lovely Friday. They wandered around Cheapside, looked at all the lovely shops and the ordnance. I like the detail that as the barges went out, having looked at all the ordnance, some of it was fired. It's like from cradle to grave. I think that's a lovely way of working with.
I've just realised why Queen Anna is being churched. She had a child. She had a daughter called Sophia on 22nd of June, 1606, who died the following day.
Oh, that's sad.
That was the last of their children, I think. So yeah, so obviously about churching, it's grim stuff really, but that's why. So it might be the visit was designed for Christian to see his new niece.
And we also had the detail earlier about when they're taking their barges, the tide serving to shoot the bridge. Having which is a term, isn't it? Shooting the bridge is for that the opportunity to get through safely. So yeah, Sarah.
Is it going to massively slow things down if I ask what churching is? Because I don't know.
No. Tracey, would you like to elaborate on that, or anyone else like to?
Yeah, it's basically kind of reintroducing a woman who's given birth to I was going to say civilization, but it's a kind of a mark that period of her life is over, and she's kind of back within. It's kind of associated with ideas of uncleanliness and things, which are really obviously very distasteful these days, but it's that women, she's done her women's stuff and she could be kind of incorporated back into society now.
And there's a certain you get this in mystery plays when they look at the purification of the Virgin. So you almost get this confusion of Jewish and Christian ritual in things like End Town Play and things like that. So where let's not pretend any of those texts feel particularly Jewish. They are leaning very heavily on this kind of this kind of ceremony, though it's not really my department. So, any other thoughts before we move on? Because that's the end of a week. It's a new week starting. We've only reached the 3rd of August, and they leave on the 11th. So. Yes, same order again. Tracey, Desna, Tom, Valentina, Sarah. So, Tracey, on Monday, let's start a new week.
Okay. On Monday, the 4th day of August, the Queen, who had not been partaker of any of their kingly ports, accompanied the royal persons and the Prince, who were attended on by the nobility and gallant courtiers, at which time the sport was to run at the ring. In following which they spent that afternoon, where sundry of the young noblemen proved their skill at that exercise, but none excelled his Majesty. And the Denmark king, at whose good success the Queen was very much delighted and took great pleasure therein.
The next day, being the solemn observation of His Majesty's thanksgiving for freeing His Highness from the treacherous practices of the Gowries, the forenoon of that day they spent in thankfulness to God, whereof His Majesty hath a most religious and zealous care. The afternoon, for their delight, were the bears and bulls brought, in which sport some time was spent, but made the shorter by reason of the honourable exercise of tilting. The lords and courtiers being ready armed, upon notice given them, repaired to the tilt yard, and every one with his several device most gallantly mounted and richly armed.
To honour his royal presence the more, the King of Denmark, armed very richly and mounted on a most stately courser, came to the tilt and ran 8 courses. The first 4 with the Lord of Effingham, who brake their staves more gallantly, 3 apiece, and foiled the other. Then the noble and most towards the Earl of Arundel ran with His Majesty of Denmark and brake 3 staves apiece, to the great joy of all the beholders. Then followed the rest of the tilters as they were appointed, so gallantly behaving themselves as was both honourable and delightful to the most gracious and royal company. Night growing upon them, they were enforced to give over their sport, where, taking their humble leaves of the 2 kings, the queen and prince, they left the tilt yard, and being unarmed, returned to the court, where, besides former graces and favours showed them by all their royal persons, they received many thanks, and so spent the rest of the evening in each other's delightful sport, till time of night called them to rest.
At this honourable exercise, the toward and most hopeful prince showed himself in his armour, being gallantly mounted, and a heart as powerful as any, though that his youth denied strength. For this day's exercise, all the masters of defence and professors thereof were summoned with their weapons to show their skill, that the King of Denmark might see the manner of our fight, and the variety of weapons practised for men's defence, as well in private quarrels, as their country's service. But the time overslipped. The challenger fencers, when they had marched with their drums and ancients about the tilt yard, departed.
The next morning, the King of Denmark, being desirous to see some of their practice, they which were ready in the town, having warning to give their attendance, in the morning early repaired to the tilt yard, and there, in presence of the 2 kings, many of the nobility and courtiers showed both manhood and skill, wherein the king took great pleasures and gave them kingly thanks and favours.
Yeah, I bet James gave some. Liked watching the lads get hot and sweaty. I'm sure he did. So yeah, lots of details here about the various sort of entertainments that are available. Run at the ring, where on horseback and you're sort of lancing through a ring. I think that's the what that's referencing there. I'm not an expert. Again, someone stop me by any means. And then various other tilt activities that I sort of got a little lost behind because I was trying to figure out the treacherous practices of the Gowries and what precisely was that on about. It took me a while because I kept accidentally Googling something to do with Elven Quest and it all got a bit wrong. I'm not sure what that was about because I didn't get there in time. So it's just someone called Gary was a bit treacherous. I don't know. Tracy?
Yeah, it was 1600. It was apparently James was lured under false pretenses to an earl's house where he was threatened with assassination. It does sound like there's a lot of skepticism about what actually happened. But they were still celebrating James's deliverance from the treacherous plot of Gowrie in tandem with the deliverance from the treacherous plot of the Catholics every year. from then on. So yeah, lots of, any excuse for a party really.
And linking it back into the theme of the at the beginning about the author was putting in there. So basically they're all having a jolly good time, charging at things and hitting each other with things and stuff. Valentina.
Just saying, I'm loving this flex of like, oh, we are so rich. Oh, we fight so well. It's a bit like war games, isn't it? So we're like, it's like, yes, yeah, welcome. By the way, this is how well we fight. Great.
Yeah, we are very much look at us, rah. And I say, I'm not suggesting for a second that James didn't also quite like watching the meaty boys laying into each other. Sarah.
This bit about the toward and most hopeful prince, though that his youth denied strength, is this a very diplomatic way of saying that the future Charles I is a bit puny?
It's not Charles. It's Henry.
Oh,
It's Henry.
Oh, of course.
And he's still very young at this time, isn't he? He's about, what, 12?
Yeah, he died in 1612.
Oh, yeah, of course. I was forgetting about Henry.
Probably. And he was a great one for kind of military exercises and so on. So yeah, you could probably visualize that very famous painting of him kind of holding a lance, in sort of military kind of stance when he was probably about 14 or something.
So he's still quite young at this point. So it's it is probably much more pragmatic. He's probably into it, but he's and also you don't kill the heir if you can avoid it. Try to avoid doing that. Don't let the games get too out of hand. Okay. Any other thoughts? We've still got more. I'm sure. We might be at the end of the tilting. We might onto other exciting spots. I mean, there is an element of just feeling a little nauseated of the adventures of the rich and famous. Here, it's very yeah. Anyway, let us go on. Same order again, Tracy. Take it away. This sport is going to be made short.
This sport was made more short by reason of the kings going from court to see our kings' houses nearest London and to hunt in their parks. After they had broken their fast, they set forward with their trains to Richmond. There that night they hunted and lay. The next dined at Hampton Court, and there hunted and killed deer with great pleasures. And surely the King of Denmark was very much delighted with the gallantness of the royal palaces of his majesties, as it appeared by his earnest noting of them, and often recounting of their pastimes and pleasures.
From thence they proceeded to Windsor, where he was entertained by the king most royally. Here was presented unto him the knights of Windsor, being all goodly gentlemen, and such as had served Queen Elizabeth in her wars, and for service done preferred in their latter years to this place of rest, and are called by name of King James Knights of Windsor.
These goodly ancient gentlemen, being in their robes of purple and scarlet, with the garter and St. George's crosses upon them.
Which goodly and charitable manner, when the King of Denmark was possessed withal, and the order of their first foundation and continuances, the king highly commended the founder, and in charity wished the successors to the world's end might continue so honourable an action as that. Whereof, by God's grace, there is no doubt his Majesty from his first coming, having so graciously and most bountifully showed his zeal to that honourable action by augmenting their portions, which were possessed of those places.
Long did they not make stay in Windsor, by reason that the time began to shorten, for the King of Denmark's departure, whereof after some time spent in hunting, they made their return to the court at Greenwich, where her Majesty lay, and on Friday, the 8th of August, there arrived, and so rested till Monday following.
Okay, so yeah, they spent most of Monday just doing the tilt stuff, and then Tuesday-ish they went to Hampton Court. Wednesday-ish off to Windsor. Thursday-ish maybe. We've had very regular dates, and I'm slightly annoyed that I don't have precision here as to precisely how. We might need to sit down and figure out how long it takes to get to certain places. But by Friday, they get back to Greenwich. So and then they just lounge about till Monday. Just you put their feet up, read a book. I think after it's been a busy week, so I think probably and they've got to go to church on Sunday. It's busy. It's busy. Other thoughts about this? The high life of the rich and famous. It's technically not really this stuff isn't quite what we're here for, but it's all grist to the mill. Conspicuous consumption. Okay, let's move on then. Let's find out what happened oh no, we're going straight on to the Saturday. Okay, so no, they're not kicking their feet up. So rested till Monday following, except they immediately say that on the 9th something's happening. I'm confused. This account confuses me. Tracey, same ordering as last time. The next morning then.
The next morning then, being Saturday the 9th of August, the tide serving fit for their purpose, this gracious and royal King of Denmark, being now to take his farewell of those he held in esteem with great courtesy and many thanks to those of the council and nobility, which stayed from following the kings, he gave him princely and most loving farewell. And so of many others of how honour and worship, with many rich and bountiful rewards, the officers of the king's household and guard.
Which done, the barges giving their attendance, these two royal kings, the Queen and Prince Henry, came aboard them, and were rowed by all industrious means down the river of Thames, so low as Northfleet or thereabouts, where they had their train attending and their coaches. So passed they on the way to Rochester, leaving the way to Gravesend. All the way followed with such numbers of people, as well from London as other places, that it was to be wondered at.
Time had brought them both near the city of Rochester, where they are met with the mayor and brethren of the city, who with reverence delivered his mace unto his Majesty, which graciously did accept the same, and redelivered it to the mayor, willing him to keep it and to vie it with justice as before. Which done, the mayor taking his footcloth horse, which was ready, and rode on before his Majesty, bearing the mace before him throughout the city, to the house of the right worshipful Sir Peter Buck Knight, one of his highest officers of the navy, which houses was the lodging of the King of Denmark, whom our king there left to his repose, and returned himself to the house of the Reverend Bishop of Rochester, Dr. Barlow, and the Queen and Prince to their lodgings, which were all several.
The next day, being Sunday, which wholly appointed day of the Lord, their Majesties came to the cathedral church, to the college, where they heard a most learned sermon by a reverend grave and learned doctor.
The sermon ended, their dinners prepared aboard the ships, and their boats and barges attending them. They set forwards to the water's side, where every officer in his place served. The Right Honourable Earl of Nottingham, Lord High Admiral being present, Sir Robert Mansell, Sir John Trevor, and others.
Slightly confused how they end up in Rochester. I'm just sort of looking at maps. Isn't that a bit out their way? They have to go down and then come back up again. Oh well, maybe there's a logic to that I don't understand. Am I missing where Gravesend is because I thought it was there. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, they've gone there, and isn't it lovely? I like the that sort of ceremonial detail of, I'm going to give you my mace, and everyone's going, please give it back, please give it back. That's the drill. That's the drill. Don't suddenly decide you like it and keep it, because that'll be really awkward. It's not actually a present. It's just a bit of ceremony. Yeah, and all sorts of things. Other thoughts in the room? Tom?
Are these the Sank ports, or is that something totally different?
I don't know precise which are and which aren't. I think they're further south. But I'm not sure. Again, not quite my department. I'm sure someone who's faster at typing on Google will be able to answer that question. I'm always, whenever someone talks about a journey, I always just start going, but how did you end up there? Which road did you take?
Sandwich, Overhyde, New Romney, and Hastings. So not Rochester.
No, didn't think so. Anyway, Sarah.
Doesn't it say though at the beginning that he boards his ship at Gillingham?
Yeah.
He goes from.
So if they go round, it's still a bit out of their way.
It's like they would hit they'd hit Gravesend first, and then they go to Rochester, and then to Gillingham, and then they could go to sea that way. But then it does beg the question: why don't they just sail from Gravesend? I'm not entirely sure what's going on there. And they do set sail from Gravesend. So why did they go? I don't know.
Maybe they just fancy going to Rochester. It's a nice place.
There was probably someone there with a good cellar. Let's face it.
I mean, hell, maybe the mayor just invited them and thought, why not? Should we go to Rochester? Yeah! They're all very drunk. Let's go to Rochester. I've got a day, Lou. We can make it. It's fine. Okay, I'm being very silly now because I don't know the answers. Okay, let's read on. The king had a note. Tracey, take it away, please. I think it was note. King had a note.
The king had a note delivered him containing the names of every ship, what burden they were, and what munition and men they had, which note his highness observed and viewed every ship as they rowed alongst, keeping their way, till they came to the ship prepared for them to dine, which ship was perfumed with a sweet and pleasant perfume, and hanged with cloth of gold all the sides within, wherein 3 chairs of estates were placed for the 2 kings and queen.
The dinner was furnished with all kind of dainty provision in such abundant manner that the King of Denmark marvelled where such store of meat should be dressed. And to see the manner of it, his Majesty took occasion after dinner to go upon a spacious gallery made upon lighters between the 2 royal ships, the Elizabeth Jonas and the White Bear, near which 2 ships rid a great hulk which was furnished with ovens for baked meats, and had in it 3 fair ranges to roast with. All which his Majesty in person saw, and throughout that ship went from place to place, noting every room.
Time passing away, the kings took to their barges, accompanied with the queen, prince, and noblemen, and rowed on towards Chatham, where they had sight of all the ships, which were rich in ancients, pendants, hags, and streamers, and withal so furnished with goodly men as might joy their majesties to behold. All which made so glorious a show that might well amaze the mind of a man to think on, being a friend, but terrify the heart of the proudest enemy to see it.
When their majesties had viewed the whole fleet, they were rowed to the shore, where on a hill, very convenient, they might overlook the whole navy. There was ordained places for them. When being seated and the word given, every ship in the due course discharged orderly their whole ordnance, in such order and form, the one ship after the other, as was greatly pleasing to their majesties, and gained great credit to the gunners, performers of that service. The great shot then discharged was 2,300, besides the health at dinner, which was begun with shot and answered.
This welcome most honourably performed, the king gave the Lord High Admiral and the officers thanks for their pains and care taken herein, and returned to Rochester to their lodgings. That evening, the gunners of the navy showed very excellent and rare fireworks.
Do you really need fireworks when you can set off 2,300 shot? I mean, is that an exaggeration? I mean, I suppose if it's the whole fleet. Again, this is coming back to this thing we have with Lord Mayor's shows and other elements. And I actually just watching some of the pageantry this last week of just going, but who's queuing that? How do you queue all? I mean, some of the guns must be a few fraction of a second. Like, how are you doing that? I want to know. What's the system? I mean, is it someone with a flag? Can everyone see the flag? I don't know. But we've got various ships: the Elizabeth Jonas and the White Bear, and we've got a meat ship. I mean, it's described as a hulk, so it's possibly not it's not a ship that has any other major purpose in its life except to be used as additional storage and or for this particular occasion used to dress the meat. I just love the way that the King of Denmark goes, so how did you organise all the meat? And they go, oh, it's fine, we've got a ship for that. Would you like a look around? Yes, I love looking round things. That's what I've done all my time. I just love looking. This is what royal families do. They look at things and say, so what do you do? I dress the meat. I do feel that this Danish king is actually a better basis for the modern monarchy's system of working than James is. Sorry, I'm being very facetious today. Sarah.
I am also going to be very facetious because I just have visions of him getting back to Denmark now going, do you know what I saw? I saw a hulk that was given over entirely to roasting meat. We should have one of those. Can we not convert the royal barge into a meat roasting barge? I mean, they had 3 ovens.
Well, there's part of me thinking maybe it was the reverse. He was just going, God, it's all a bit much. I mean, I think James is trying a little hard, actually. Is he overcompensating for something, maybe? I don't know. We don't know what he really thinks. We just have this account. Oh, well, we have other accounts. But, yeah, I'm curious, actually. Because this is all about, this projection of power. Which I suppose it's not a threat because they're allies, but there's always an implicit threat as well of these things. Look how rich and powerful we are, as well as we are your allies. So yeah. Sarah.
Yeah, my history isn't good enough, but Tracey will probably know. Because I only remember this because I read a novel about Christian's reign 25 years ago, which was quite good fun. Indeed, yes.
Wonderful book.
It's yeah.
I love it.
But it's a really good book from what I remember, but it's 25 years since I read it. But was he not quite a warlike king? Didn't he lay waste to a whole load of German provinces? I mean, he was quite good at waging war, wasn't he? So maybe there was an implicit threat there, but I don't know when that was in relation to this, whether this is before all that kicks off or later or during.
There's ongoing issues with Sweden through for a long time. Yes, the Danes are warlike, as I think a certain play might have described them as being warlike. I can't remember.
I don't know what you're talking about.
No. Just enough, really. Yeah.
Or for that matter, hey, would you like us to supply you with some guns? We'll look at our wonderful cannon. I mean, the thing is, got to be careful firing that amount of ordnance, especially from ships. Because I mean, they're not going to capsize or anything, but you could, if they're all firing in one direction, you're going to move. You know, there's an equal and opposite reaction to these things. You've got to be a bit careful.
They're not as safe as he makes out either. Because there was at least one occasion some poor gunner was blown to pieces on Bankside during a Lord Mayor's show.
Yeah, their standards are not the same as today. There's very little standardization. Okay, let us continue. We've got 2 more little merry-go-rounds to go. So, Tracey, the next morning, it's Monday. It's the 11th. It's the last day.
Good. Next morning, being Monday, the 11th of August, the kings, the queen, and prince, with their trains, set forward towards Gravesend. By the way, so followed with people as was wonderful, and did make the train of courtiers admire. Yea, such was the multitude of people, Londoners and others, which came to Rochester, that thousands could get no lodgings or meat for their money.
The time hath brought these royal persons near to the town of Gravesend, where the port rein of the town with his brethren in very decent manner presented themselves to his majesty and offered his office unto his highness, which graciously accepted the same and delivered it again unto him.
So passed their majesties forward to the waterside, at whose coming they were saluted with a mighty peal of ordnance from the king of Denmark's admirals, and so from all the rest of his fleet, who, having finished, the 2 blockhouses of Tilbury and Gravesend began, and thundered such a volley of shot as was highly to be commended.
Aboard of the royal ship of Denmark kings are these princes gone, where a most hearty welcome they receive and great cheer, the ordinance oftentimes discharging upon healths to all friends, which ordinance was answered by our 2 blockhouses in such order as deserves commendations.
After dinner, the gunners of the King of Denmark's ships showed their rare devices of fireworks, the beauty of which was not to be seen by reason of the brightness of the sun, which dimmed the same.
Yes, make sure when firing your fireworks to do it at night. I have actually seen firework displays when they've done it too early, and yeah, it's rubbish. It really is. You hear the bangs, you can't see a damn thing. Yeah, I really, it's like a sort of weird artillery pissing contest. It's like, you know, you fire and then we fire and then you fire and then we fire and then now we're doing fireworks. Oh, it's too bright. I really like that. I also like that there's almost a hint of queuing. So the Denmark's admiral fired first and then the rest of his fleet. Now that I can understand how you cue that, because the admiral just goes dum, they all fire, and then the rest of his fleet fires after that, and it's yeah, I can understand the queuing of that. That makes sense. And then it's firing back and forth, so it's like you fire, then we fire, and then you fire, and then we fire, and you know, isn't that cool? If you like bangs, bet the dogs weren't happy. Sarah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm getting the sense that everyone in North Kent was deaf by the time Christian went home.
Just going, yeah, oh, it was great. It was great. Can you please stop? Okay, we have, disappointing fireworks. They've been having dinner, and that's almost it. Sarah, dinner is ended. Oh, not Sarah. Sorry, Tracey. Sarah's at the end of the loop. Sorry, Tracey.
Dinner ended, and the tide, which stayeth not, serving to go for London, our gracious king and queen, having brought his kingly brother to his own ship, from whence he brought him, after many kind adieus given on every side, as well by the princes as the noble train, they commend his majesty to God's protection and heartily wished his safety in his own country. Which solemn farewells accomplished, the king, queen, and prince took their barges to come from court, leaving the king of Denmark to God's pleasure and the favour of the winds. He sent after them a token of princely love in the thundering noise of all the ordnance from all his ships.
These royal companies pard, as you have heard, the King of Denmark took order for rewards to be given to all officers of his Majesty's household, which, as it is said, was most bountiful. And for other places, aboard the ships to the masters, like rewards.
Thus I have recounted in 2 several pamphlets the whole discourse and royal entertainment of the most royal king, whose pleasures with great welcomes in all places no prince but may admire.
And most worthily was the love of all men bestowed on his highness, for all courtesy and loving favours might be expected from a king of his magnificent was not wanting in him, as his gracious countenance showed in all places. Besides which, it hath very seldom or never been seen so many strangers together in this land, so well governed and so kindly used. Such was his princely care of them, and our nation forbreeding of quarrels by any of his people, that of all other vices their charge was to keep them from being drunk, and withal inflicted upon them a heavy punishment for any that should offend contrary to his commandment. For the execution of this his Majesty's pleasure herein, he appointed a marshal, who had divers men as officers under him, to have a vigilant care over them, which with all diligence performed the same, and such as they found drunk were brought to a house appointed for their prison, where their thumbs were chained together and nailed by it to a post, where they remained till some suit was made for their delivery and hearty repentance for their fault. The due execution whereof kept them in such awe that you should seldom after the first week see any of them out of order.
A comfortable hearing it is to all Christians to see so vile a sin reformed. God grant us all to follow like examples of well-doings. Preserve our dread sovereign, Lord King James, the Queen, the Prince, and all the rest of their royal issue. And send this famous kingly brother a fair wind, and a safe and pleasant passage to his desired port. Amen.
Amen. I love this detail of just going. It goes into this elaboration of saying it was amazing that the English at no point were really horrible to any of the foreigners. And how did we achieve this? Well, we made sure that no one got drunk, because if they got drunk, we were going to torture them. And word clearly got out. I mean, it's like if at the Olympics anyone is out of line, you go straight into the drunk pit, and we're going to just nail your thumbs to things.
But if anybody suggests that perhaps that the king legitimacy could be questioned, don't say this out loud, because you'll find your thumb nailed to a post.
It's a fascinating coda, isn't it? It was a lovely trip, and I quite like the way it reads as well, of just going and and then the king sailed off, leaving the other king to leave it to the winds and God. We say goodbye. They haven't actually left yet. I don't know if the ship's literally left at that point, but our king had gone, so it's all over. And also good turnout. Lots of people came, according to the account. I'm always slightly dubious, because that sentence is almost a commonplace in these kind of things. It's saying, lots of people turned up for the king and queen. Well, I'm sure lots of them did. Was it as many as you said? I don't know. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's a lovely way to close it. Nice work there by Henry Roberts, and that closes his second pamphlet on this. We have another account to work through, and we've got lots of other little bits and pieces which we will attack in due course. But any final thoughts really from the room on this end of the activity? Let's say Last video we covered, say, the more organised civic pageantry of it all. This is a much more relaxed end of it. There was some civic interaction, but it wasn't really pageantry in the same way. It was more just to saunter through and had a little look. I mean, this is always a bit of a problem whenever we do anything connected with the royal family, is everything is to a degree a performance. Everything is orchestrated. Everything is stage managed on some level. So it does really blur the lines between what we're talking about, what is performative and what isn't. Well, if the king's there, everything's performative.
Yeah.
I mean, we will actually drill down onto the performative, the more formal, actual theatre-y kind of stuff later. But yeah, at the moment, just trying to build the shape of things. Sarah.
Yes, I mean, I am not usually here for evening sessions, and so I don't really know a lot about pamphlets. I haven't really done any of them. I don't know if this follows a sort of familiar pattern with them or not. But I just think, I mean, I found this fascinating just because I love all the detail. I love all the stuff about, you know, the fireworks and the ordnance and going to Cheapside, and it's just it's like the Hello magazine of its day. And I mean, that is all staged, you know. It's like today you have sort of celeb rags and websites that sort of stage photo shoots and get exclusive rights to, you know, celebrities getting married or whatever. And this just strikes me as the you know, the early 17th century version of that. And it must have been fascinating because although it is kind of all performative, it's giving, I mean, I don't know, does it say at the beginning how much this pamphlet cost? I assume it was pretty cheap. It's giving people like a chance to sort of, you know, ordinary people to kind of have a little sort of ogle at what's happening secondhand. And it's just like an extended press release, and I find that absolutely fascinating. As someone who used to be a journalist, it's just like some of these sentences are not unfamiliar to the sort of stuff I had to wade through on a regular basis, and I just love all the detail, and I'm even more convinced now that he definitely had an agenda in doing that. And maybe his agenda was literally only to make money. You know, maybe he was just like, oh, I could do this, make a few quid. But it's clearly being written, you know, for PR purposes. And I don't know if that was generally the case with you know, a lot of these royal pamphlets, or whether this is particularly cheesy, but I do just love it.
Well, I mean, we have this emerging, I don't know how much of a market there is, because, you know, we've looked at Lord Mayor's shows and we're not really sure about why they're printed precisely, how that works. But, you know, we have got other royal events like this which do have publishing history to a lesser or greater degree. I think is it like that sort of the Hello end, or is it a souvenir program end? Because it does seem to have a bit of both. I mean, but it feels like it should be a glossy thing that someone's selling on the side of the street going, yeah, do you miss the show? Here's the official programme. 20 quid. Thank you very much. Tom?
Pamphleting was incredibly powerful. I mean, because it wasn't rare, but it was about news feed. And, you know, people really were looking for it and gobbling it up, because pamphleteering was very big, because it was the only form, you know.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I think you're both right. I think it's a kind of interesting. It's an established genre by now, but it's a kind of combination of the sort of news bulletin / celebrity gossip / sort of PR release. You know, it's a kind of hybrid form, really. But what's interesting about these types of texts is where the kind of little gaps show, where the kind of strangeness comes through, like the bit about the guys having their thumbs nailed to posts and stuff. It's just like, hold on a minute.
Yes,
So
this
that's all
isn't
part
this
of
isn't
it.
the world of unity and brotherly love that we
No.
started this pamphlet with, is it?
No, well, not the way that we would see it. No, absolutely
No.
not. I mean, we've already had, bears and bulls being baited to death, alluded to in passing as great sport. So,
And the lions, we don't know how well the lions are being kept.
Menagerie, yeah, absolutely. What we think of as kind of fun that's not quite the same as they would have thought in 1607.
I think also with the thumbs, they just put them, and then they put them above their head. So it's very uncomfortable, if not torturous. But it's a position that you wouldn't want to be in for too long. But it wasn't actually.
About that when I'm in the pub on Monday, trying to ignore what else is going on.
There's an element that hopefully the context of this video will not supply. This won't be out till March. So
I think it's a good one of its kind. I really do. I've enjoyed it actually.
Yeah, again, I'm sort of looking at what can be done with this, and I almost think the hello idea is quite nice. I quite like the idea of producing some weird glossy version of this for today that is over the top with photos of stage things, and and to play into that. I don't know if that's a route to take with it, because I don't think even once we have accumulated all of the data on this that we're going to have that much of a performative text that we can do in the way that we have with other royal entries and Lord Mayor shows. I may be wrong. We have got text and we have got some things, but I don't know how extensive it is in conjunction with sort of the vastness of the event itself, if that makes sense.
I mean, the fact that it generated at least 3 discrete texts, and no one's really ever heard of it these days. So I think it's very interesting, because it was a biggie, and I think the one we haven't got to yet that has got speeches and things in it, I think will have much more similarity to the pageant books we've looked at at other times.
Yeah. Yes. Sarah.
Just continuing from what you were saying, I mean, one way you could stage this possibly is to do the whole Hello magazine versus News of the World. So you could have the official version, you could have the press release version with all the fabulousness and it all going on. And then you could have like little side scenes of what was going on behind the scenes. So while there are all these fireworks going off, you've got guys in the background having their thumbs, nailed, and while the king's on a progress or whatever, and then you've got the Harrington letter, which we haven't done yet, with all the gossip of what's actually going on behind the scenes and people getting drunk and falling over. So you could maybe put together a show that kind of had quite good tension between this is the official account, guys, this is how fabulous it was, and then the kind of picking out the little threads where you've got them and embroidering them slightly to create a sort of this is what's going on behind the scenes kind of might be quite fun.
I think there is something there is almost a drama that could be created about this text. I mean, about what's going on here that would be really quite enjoyable to do as well, which would drift a bit further away from the actual text itself. But that's not inherently a bad thing.
And then you could get a bit with Morocco in as well.
Well, I mean, who wouldn't want a performing horse?
Exactly.
The idea of we'd have to CGI the old St. Paul's and then hire a horse. I mean, this could get expensive. I mean, for audio, it's fine. That isn't a problem. I've got Morocco. What was that, Morocco? Now you can put the hoof down now. Okay. You can tell I haven't done this for a while. Valentina, do you have any final thoughts from this? No. Desna, any final thoughts? No. Any additional final thoughts from anybody else? Do we think we've wrung this one dry? Okay, well, we will be returning to this particular visit with another witness text and other bits and pieces probably thrown into the mix next time. I don't know. It may stretch to a fourth session as well. I don't know. We're definitely coming back for a third. Who knows? We might come back for a fourth. How many helpings of royal excess can we really stomach in these times? We shall see. And on that note, thanks to all my wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.